But what did I really experience? I experienced anti-Semitism. I experienced countries which themselves violate human rights. And they tried very much with their friends to find a scapegoat, namely Israel, so that they would not be talked about. And now we would like not to experience the same shame again, the same shame that we experienced the first time. Who are we here for? Who are we representing? We're here to defend other people. We have to tell the countries, you must change, you must respect human rights. This is what we have to do. And if we can't manage it this time, then, my friends, for all the women and children and all the others who are suffering, it's really, really a sad moment. And if we have to go away, if we have to leave because things go too far, then that's what we'll have to do.
I'm unfortunately being given the signal that we're out of time here, so I'm going to allow each of the following speakers 2 sentences exactly, and you'll help me with this, won't you?
Je redis juste mon effort.
I would just like to say that I was horrified that at what happened in Durban. One, it's not the same as what happened at the NGO conference. If we don't want to go back to the United Nations, because the negotiations are very difficult, before you leave for good, and before you have a situation the same as the Human Rights Council, I just want us to see what is going to happen in the long term. The Human Rights Council will have a 2011 plan, and democratic countries will no longer be able to rediscuss the new principles, and there's going to be a complete dislocation of human rights at the UN, and this is going to bring back barbarism, and this is not a minor risk at a time of great tension with Iran. This merits to ensure that there's no disinformation on text, that we should not say that they're scandalous and hateful when they are just bad, and it's not the same thing. And secondly, one should not have positions of principle in order to gratify oneself. Because if this conference against racism goes down the drain, then all of those who are protected by the platform, the Muslim countries and so on, they will be the winners. I am horrified that Ahmadinejad is going to be at the conference, and if it was Barack Obama who attended the conference, nobody would even give a glance to Mr. Ahmadinejad.
Just a final note, not so much about what will happen tomorrow and this week and the consequences of it. Just an expression of incredulity that we should have to sit here today and talk about whether a resolution should really be adopted, which has the effect of banning speech about some of the most important ideas in the world. When Martin Luther in 1517 posted his thesis on the wall and condemned the Pope for selling indulgences and for granting what he called in the mad idea of granting pardons for sins. He was excommunicated finally. But the idea that 4 centuries later we're talking about the question of whether it should have been illegal, or maybe now should be illegal, to say something really bad about a religion fills me with sadness, apart from the fact that members of this panel agree on so much more than we disagree.
And Brett, I think you get the last word tonight.
Okay. One is to get a perspective of this conference. Mark Malloch Brown, who is a member of the British Foreign Ministry and former official over at the United Nations, characterized it as damage control or damage limitation, I think. That's a really sad statement as to what we're talking about here, which is trying to create an international standard for combating racism. That is not a standard or a forum that you should be entering into willingly. Frankly, the numbers are against you. You have more countries that are not committed to this process than are, and you're going to result, and therefore the results that we have are frankly unsurprising. And at some point, there's a fear that if you don't participate, the results may be worse. Well, if the results are worse, then they'll simply reflect what is the reality of the process that is going on right now. And if that embarrassment doesn't lead countries to change, then what will? I mean, damage limitation only takes you so far. Death by 1,000 cuts on human rights is no virtue. Thanks.
Thank you to all of our panelists, and I think we'll be moving on to the final session.
Thank you, Ms. Wu, and thank you to the panelists. We're actually not going to be having another session, but I will be calling up Ambassador François Zimmeray up to the podium. But before, I'll ask you all to leave here so we can give him all the attention at the panel here. Please take your seats. I'd like to present to you Ambassador François Zimmeray. He's the Ambassador of France for Human Rights. He was a mayor in France at the age of 27, and at 37 became a member of the European Parliament, the youngest member of the Socialist delegation. He is a longtime human rights activist for victims in Darfur, Laos, and Congo, and for the cause of the Middle East peace. I'd like to call him up here so he can say his final remarks. And then we'll be hearing from another ambassador, and then we're all done. Thank you.
Bien.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to say first and foremost that it's a real privilege to be able to speak to you this evening at the end of a day which I know has been extremely rich and very interesting. We can all feel it more or less clearly. We are not experiencing a moment which is the usual sort of moment, because we are now on the eve of a day which might be historical.